Thank you all for having me. CLF has been a home for us as we have been embarking on our embodied carbon journey, and an early partner with us as we sought to set reduction strategies. So I'm thrilled to be here and present with you all today. I'll go through a few items about our carbon fee, what and how that has translated to our campus modernization project, and then leave ample time for Blake and Mark and questions from you all. So just to get started, Microsoft has been committed to sustainability for quite some time. We set our first carbon emissions reduction goal in 2009 and became a carbon neutral company in 2012. That is also when we instituted an internal carbon fee, which I'll get into in a second here and describe how that works. From there, we focused on our primary areas, which are carbon, water, ecosystems, and waste, getting a zero waste certification for our campus in Redmond, Washington, doing a net zero non-potable water campus in Silicon Valley, increasing our carbon fee to $15 per metric ton. But in 2020, we stepped back and said, are we doing enough? And the answer unequivocally was no, we are not doing enough. The society is not doing enough. And we reassessed our goals to say, what should they be based on science, based on those of us who can do more, must do more, and have the opportunity, but also the responsibility to do so. So we made a new set of announcements in 2020. We were already committed to operating 100% renewable by 2025. But we updated that carbon neutral commitment to carbon negative by 2030. Important in that distinction is that previously in carbon neutral, we were only looking at scope 1, 2, and air travel. Now we are looking at our full comprehensive 1, 2, and 3. So that was the biggest delta there, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through. We also committed to becoming carbon negative, water positive and zero waste, as well as protecting more land than we operate on. And by 2050, we will remove our historic emissions for scope 1 and 2. So a lot there, and we'll focus today on carbon. Our internal carbon fee is fairly simple. We actually assess a price on carbon to all of our business groups. So we track our carbon emissions from all of our scopes. From there, we charge each business group a carbon fee for their portion of those emissions on an annual basis, and set it high enough to encourage that we are that they are making reductions, and also that we are able to fund carbon removal, which is necessary for our carbon negative commitment. And from there, that funding mechanism continues. So funding reduction and removal, and really focusing on areas where we can decarbonize, jumpstart critical decarbonization markets. We recently released our 2022 sustainability report last week. And this is a breakdown of our carbon emissions. This is not surprising for most large companies. Scope 3 represents almost 100% of our total carbon emissions. So for us, 96% of our annual emissions are in scope 3. For what we'll talk about today, and embodied carbon in building materials, that largely lies in the 30.97% of capital goods. So there are many improvements necessary to update the methodology on how we report these information. So to step a little bit back in my old role, I recently changed from our head of sustainability real estate over to the central sustainability team within Brad Smith's org. This was a crucial project for us and the real estate team as we endeavored to redevelop a portion of our corporate campus building, 3 million square feet of new office space for our employees. This started the announcement was made in 2018, I believe. And as part of it, we really sought to think about how do we want to build this space, knowing that it is a decision that will hopefully be in the ground and are part of our portfolio or part of someone's portfolio for 50 to 100 years. And we wanted to also prove that we could embed those carbon negative commitments or those science-based commitments today. So it's not we need new technology to enable that goal. It really is, how do we walk the walk today? That's really where we started thinking about both sides of the equation. So we had long been focused on operational carbon, reducing our energy usage, procuring 100% renewable electricity, and thinking about limiting our fossil fuels. We certainly took it further than we ever had before on this campus. We set a performance EY target for every building in addition to pursuing LEED Platinum certification and having aggressive energy efficiency measures as part of the ECM strategy. We really managed to an energy use intensity budget for each building, which enabled our design teams to make decisions throughout the process. We had already procured 100% renewable electricity via an agreement with the Washington State Utility Commission and Puget Sound Electric. So we were already on 100% renewable electricity, but then made the important decision to remove fossil fuels from daily operations. So all of our cooking will be done 100% electrically. All of our heating and cooling, similarly, will be done 100% electrically using geothermal wells with our thermal energy center. So on the operational carbon side, we felt pretty confident. The embodied carbon side was really a whole different ballgame. We knew we wanted to track our carbon emissions on embodied carbon, but the tools that were in place at the time did not enable quick decision-making. That's why we were a founding funder and one of the first corporate pilots of EC3, because we believe in democratized data. We believe in the open source free to use component of what EC3 and building transparency was building. And we really wanted to be part of that solution to make sure we were testing it and scaling it such that it would enable these decision makings not only within Microsoft, but within the broader real estate organization or the real estate sector. We set a 30% reduction target against our against the CLF baseline for our campus, and used EC3 throughout the process. So this is an example of one of our buildings where we used EC3 in early decision-making, which I know Mark and Blake will talk about, of how we think about our structural systems, but also included global warming potential information in our bids. So this is an example of carbon smart procurement. We get this type of bid analysis from our general contractors each and every time we make a decision where we're weighing various factors. We ask that they also add the carbon emissions factors into their recommendations. So on this specific bid, the costs were the same. One was a 31% reduction, one was a 13% reduction. All things equal, we picked 31% reduction. And that's the type of information that we just didn't have easily accessible prior to EC3 being launched and operationalized. And that really puts the decision-making in the hands of the development managers who are ultimately accountable for the budget and meeting our carbon reduction targets. So it's been incredibly powerful to have that data at decision-making time rather than doing calculations, on the back end or the sustainability consulting team thinking about carbon emissions separate from the decision makers. We published a white paper a few years ago on what we've learned so far on reducing embodied carbon using the EC3 tool, as well as some really first of its kind, certainly first of its kind for us, reporting with scope A4 and 5, where we're tracking actual carbon emissions during the construction phase. Skanska is one of our, Balfour Beatty is one of our general contractors on that job. And Mark has been doing a lot of that work in making sure that we have accurate, actionable information on carbon emissions as part of the construction process, as well as water emissions, has been a really eye-opening component for us as we think about how we leverage this data to make better decisions going forward about master planning design strategies, and also just the portion of our carbon emissions that lies in that A4 through A5 category. The last resource I'll just highlight is the Building Transparency has an Owners Carbon Action Network, which is a group of owners who are embedding embodied carbon decision-making in their processes. It's a great resource for those who are looking to grow that practice within their organization. And they've put out an embodied carbon action plan, which really breaks out by project phase what opportunities there are, who's responsible for them, how those decisions should be made. So I highly recommend those of you starting out on your embodied carbon journey or midway through, really thinking about leveraging this tool as you get everyone involved within a project, thinking about embodied carbon and taking action against those reductions.